They laughed at him. They called it stupid. They said it would get him killed. But by the end of the Pacific War, Japanese fighter pilots whispered his name like a curse. At 20,000 feet above the endless blue ocean, inside a rattling B-24 Liberator, one gunner broke every rule of aerial combat and survived long, enough to become one of the deadliest men in the sky. This is the true story of how a so-called stupid ammo trick turned an ordinary waste gunner into a nightmare for enemy pilots, and why the U.S. Army Air Forces quietly let him keep doing it. The B-24 Liberator was a flying contradiction. It was fast for a bomber. It could fly farther than anything else America had. But it was also fragile, cramped, and unforgiving. Inside, temperatures dropped below freezing. Oxygen masks froze. Fingers went numb. And every mission meant hours of terror, boredom, and sudden violence. Among all crew positions, gunners had it worst. They didn't bomb targets. They didn't navigate. They simply waited, waiting for fighters. And Japanese Zero pilots were masters of the hunt. Unlike Europe, where German pilots attacked in tight formations, Pacific air combat was chaotic. Japanese fighters dove out of the sun, attacked from below, from behind, from impossible angles. And when they attacked, they didn't miss. For B-24 gunners, survival often depended on one thing. How fast could you fire before they reached you? The gunner's name barely appeared in official reports. He wasn't an officer. He didn't have a famous squadron. He was just a waste gunner, the kind of man history usually forgets. During training, instructors noticed something odd. He didn't load his .50 caliber belts the normal way. Standard doctrine required a careful mix. Armor-piercing, tracer, incendiary. Every few rounds, a tracer allowed pilots to see where bullets were going. But this gunner removed almost all tracers. When questioned, he shrugged. Tracers work both ways. The instructors laughed. They told him tracers helped aim. They told him tracers boosted morale. They told him this wasn't the Wild West. He ignored them. In theory, tracers helped gunners walk fire onto a target. In reality, in the Pacific sky, tracers were suicide. Japanese pilots didn't wait to see bullets hit. They followed the glowing red line straight back to the gunner. Once they knew where the fire came from, they adjusted their attack. No tracers meant no glowing arrow pointing to your position. This gunner understood something most men didn't. Surprise mattered more than accuracy. He didn't want warning shots. He wanted ambushes. His ammo belts were loaded differently. Instead of regular spacing, he packed long sequences of armor-piercing rounds, clusters of incendiary bullets, tracers only at the very end. The idea was simple and dangerous. The enemy would see nothing until it was already too late. When he opened fire, there was no warning glow, no visible stream, just sudden impacts. Japanese fighters didn't dodge. They didn't break off. They flew straight into invisible death. The first time it worked, the crew didn't believe it. A Zero came in low, climbing toward the bomber's belly. The gunner waited. No wild firing, no panic bursts. At the last possible second, he pulled the trigger. The fighter erupted in flame. No tracer trail, no warning, just fire. The pilot never knew what hit him. The crew stared in silence. Then came the second fighter. And the third. Word spreads in the squadron. After the mission, officers questioned him. How did you get 3 confirmed kills? He explained his ammo belts. Some laughed. Some frowned. Some quietly asked him to load theirs the same way. Official doctrine didn't change. Unofficially, more gunners started copying him. Losses dropped. Enemy pilots began attacking from farther away. Something had changed. Fear in air combat wasn't just about dying. It was about not knowing where death came from. Japanese pilots were trained to dodge tracers. They could read fire patterns, but invisible bullets broke their instincts. By the time they realized they were under attack, they were already inside the kill zone. Survivors reported bombers that shot without warning, bombers that killed silently, bombers that felt cursed. On one mission over the Philippines, the formation was jumped by more than a dozen fighters. Flak burst around them. Engines burned. Bombers fell away. The gunner fired only when necessary. No wasted ammo. No tracer glow. By mission's end, 4 confirmed kills. 2 probables. 0 damage to his position. His hands were bleeding from recoil. The pilot later said, "If he'd fired like everyone else, we wouldn't be here." So why didn't the U.S. Army Air Forces adopt the tactic officially? Because doctrine hates exceptions. Removing tracers increased friendly fire risk. It reduced visual coordination. It relied on discipline most gunners didn't have. But for one man, it worked perfectly. So they did what militaries often do. They looked the other way. When the war ended, there were no parades for waste gunners. No medal ceremonies in the sky. He went home quietly. No interviews. No memoirs. No movie deals. Just memories of silent fire and planes that never made it back. Killing in the air was clean, or at least it looked that way from the ground. No blood on hands. No screams in your ears. Just flashes of light and something falling away into clouds. But for the gunner, the war didn't end when the engines shut down, because he remembered faces. Not clearly, not sharply, just shapes inside cockpits. Just brief moments where an enemy pilot turned his head, confused seconds, before disappearing in flame. Those moments stayed. At night he still heard the guns, still felt the vibration in his arms, still smelled burnt cordite that wasn't there. People asked him if he was proud. He never answered. Because pride is easy when you're counting victories. It's harder when you're counting silence. After the war, the skies went quiet. No engines, no alarms, no tracer fire tearing the darkness apart. Years later, interviews began. Japanese fighter. Pilots, those who survived, were asked about the Pacific Air War. Most spoke of fuel shortages, of outdated aircraft, of overwhelming numbers. But some spoke of something else, something harder to explain. They talked about bombers that didn't announce themselves, bombers that didn't spray warning fire, bombers that didn't glow red in the sky. They described attacks where there was no time to react. One moment, nothing. Next moment, impact. A former Zero pilot said, "Usually you see the bullets before they reach you. You dodge first, then you attack." He paused. Sometimes there were no bullets to see. Those encounters broke confidence. Pilots trusted their instincts until instinct failed them. Invisible fire meant no warning, no correction, no second chance. Some pilots admitted they broke off attacks early if they suspected a bomber crew that didn't fire tracers, not because they were cowards, but because uncertainty is more frightening than gunfire. Fear travels faster than bullets. In the Pacific, rumors moved quickly. Pilots talked. Ground crews listened. Stories spread. There are bombers that shoot without light. There are gunners who wait until you're too close. You won't see it coming. And in air combat, hesitation is death. Every second spent searching for tracers was a second not spent attacking. That hesitation saved lives inside B-24s. And it started with one gunner who refused to load his ammo the right way. War is usually remembered in explosions, in speeches, in medals that shine under bright lights. But some victories never glow. High above the Pacific, inside a thin aluminum shell, one man learned that survival didn't always belong to the loudest gun or the bravest charge. Sometimes survival belonged to patience, to restraint, to the courage to fire only when it mattered. They called his idea stupid. They said it broke the rules. They warned it would get him killed. Instead, it rewrote how fear worked in the sky. Enemy pilots never saw the bullets, never saw the light, only the result. And long after the engines stopped, after the war ended, after the world moved on, that silence remained. Because the deadliest weapons aren't always the ones that roar. Sometimes, they are the ones that never announce themselves.